I have the wonderful privilege this morning of introducing President Michael Schneider, and I'm going to ask him to come up and address us at this time.
Hey y'all, I'm President Schneider. Got some wonderful plans for this year, and due to my excessive good looks and my 12-year-old boyish physique, I think it's gonna be a good year. Yeah, I'll be gone a couple weeks though for my Dillard's photo shoot. So, has anybody ever been to Dillard's? Yes? You know the mannequins they have in there? Those are modeled after me. So, yes, it's going to be a good year. Feel free to stop by my office. We have the cheerleaders I know are planning on having a mud wrestling tournament in my office this year. So, feel free to stop by at any time. Thank you.
Somebody, Ann, tell me my hair looks a little better than that. So, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the school year. We're going to have a great year. Look for mud wrestling. On a serious note, it's great to have you guys back. We lose a little bit when you guys leave. We love the energy. We like to have fun here, and it truly is exciting to be back. And so, what we're going to do here today is we're going to spend about 30 minutes together. And primarily, I'm going to ask Dr. Eaton to come back up here in just a second to share something. But before I do, just a couple things. We do have a lot of exciting, new, interesting things planned for you this year. In addition to all the new stuff you're aware of, some interesting developments over the summer that I thought I would share with you. First of all, you may or may not be aware, but we are starting our first ever master's program in curriculum and instruction. You're going to hear more about that later, but that's pretty exciting. That's making what we do here better, your experience better, and I'm really excited about the hard work the faculty have been doing in that area. In addition, we hired our first executive director of entrepreneurship. Dr. Corey Gregg is on campus to start working on our programming and primarily hitting the ground running with the 60 or so students last year that applied for and received Horizon Fund grants. So she's going to take that to the next level. Those of you who are in the process of working through that, feel free and stop in the Dean's Suite and meet her and ask her questions and find out what resources are available. There will be some new dates for application, for new applications, but if you have a good idea, she has accesses to resources today, so you don't necessarily always have to wait until those deadlines that are out there. In addition, two faculty members on our campus received some real cool news here this summer. They're fellows in a program that the Kansas Compact, which is the organization that the regents and the privates work together to integrate service learning on our campuses. So Dr. Alan Ayala and Dr. Becky Bowman. Dr. Ayala is in our natural sciences, and Dr. Bowman teaches in communications. They're both fellows, and they received a grant to integrate service in their classrooms. And what's really neat about that is there were 3 faculty members that were chosen, and this is state schools, private schools, across the state of Kansas, and those 2 were chosen. 2 out of the 3 McPherson College faculty. I think that's a great representation of the quality of faculty that we have here. So, let's see, all these things make us a little bit better, and we're going to be relying on you as well this year to give us that feedback as well. In addition, if you remember last year, we had a little Oprah moment right at the first convocation. And so this year, what we've got set up for you, I think, is really interesting. The Development Office has worked with local businesses and organizations to allow you to show your student ID at businesses in the community. So faculty, staff, students, you show your ID and you get 10% off. There are over 60 businesses in the community. So if you go up, if you go under the web page, under the website, go to students, click down, shop Mac, you'll see a list of participating businesses. In addition, a lot of them are identified at the establishments downtown. And so take advantage of that, take your ID wherever you go, and it doesn't hurt just to ask. Maybe that'll encourage them to play the next go around. So we've got a great year, and so I want to have Kent, Dr. Eaton come up here and share something. At the opening part of our year, we have a workshop week that faculty and staff participate in, and Kent shared something that I think was significant that started off will start the year off right, getting us focused and centered on what's really important. So I'd invite Kent to come up and share, and when Kent's finished, you're free to go. Have a great year.
Thank you, President Schneider. It's a privilege to be able to share with the entire student body now some of the things that we talked about during our welcome week when the faculty and the staff came together to prepare for the school year ahead. And I'm going to start with you the same place that I started with the faculty and staff, and that is by quoting a short section of a song by a folk singer and a real profound thinker, I believe, by the name of John Prine. Some of you might like his music as well. And this is a poem, a song about the human condition and some of the predicaments that it presents. So Prine writes, "Some humans ain't human. Some people ain't kind. You open up their hearts and here's what you'll find. A few frozen pizzas, some ice cubes with hair, a broken popsicle. You don't want to go there. Some humans ain't human, though they walk like we do. They live and they breathe just to turn the old screw. They screw you when you're sleeping. They try to screw you blind. Some humans ain't human. Some people ain't kind. You might go to church and sit down in a pew. Those humans who ain't human could be sitting right next to you. They talk about your family. They talk about your clothes when they don't even know their own ass from their own elbows. Jealousy and stupidity don't equal harmony. Jealousy and stupidity don't equal harmony." And these lyrics point out something about the way sometimes we treat one another, and most of us will have to acknowledge that in some of our worst moments, others could look at us and say, you know, you don't really embody in the way that you treat others what it means to be fully human. And to use the words of Prine here, rather than to treat one another with compassion and kindness, it's more fun just to turn the old screw. And what makes this discussion about lack of empathy and compassion relevant to us here at McPherson College at the start of this school year is that there's a lot of research that has been done recently that indicates that we as a North American society are less able to act compassionately with one another than was the case 3 generations ago. Specifically, research shows that American college students have lower and lower scores on standard empathy tests over the past 3 decades. Now, in fact, a research paper published this last May reports this fact, that in a category called perspective taking, scores have dropped 34% in this last 3-year period. And what is perspective taking? It's the ability to imagine another person's point of view. And perhaps even worse, there's a 48% decline on what's called empathic concern, and that is the tendency to feel and to respond to other people's emotions. Again, the indication is that we are less capable of doing that. Now, this research, of course, was based with college students, but all of us know that the world in which you live and you operate, let's face it, those of us in our 40s, our 50s, our 60s and older, we created this mess. And now you have to inhabit this world that we created. Now, the last thing that we could do then, of course, is point the finger at you. But it does pose the question, what are we going to do about this predicament? This fact that we are, to use the words of Prine, less capable of treating one another with basic dignity and showing compassion and empathy. Now, the good news is that these same researchers who are talking about this decline also say that it's something that we can reverse, and that empathy isn't a fixed trait, let's say like brown eyes or black hair. They say that the ability, and I'm going to quote here, to empathize is like a muscle. a muscle that's capable of growth, atrophy, disability, and even regeneration. And they point out here, think of the character in Dickens' Christmas Carol, Scrooge, a character who is totally without the capacity for concern or empathy, yet that is regenerated, it's reborn in him. And people, they say, have different innate capacities for building certain muscles, so it is true that they have different incentives for being empathetic and experiencing and honing their skills to become more so. Still quoting, they say, for some people, empathy comes easily and naturally. For others, concerted effort is required to stretch our imaginations beyond ourselves. So maybe even if we ain't human, there's still hope that we can become more human. What might be some of the causes for this lack of concern that we consistently seem to not demonstrate for one another? Maybe it's poor attendance at our churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, a decline in our attendance at those institutions. Or maybe it's like Prine said, maybe we still go, but within those churches, mosques, temples, we tolerate so much stuff like fear and demonizing one another, that we allow and tolerate hypocrisy. Maybe it's the fact that we spend too much time killing one another online. Maybe it's that we're too absorbed in reality TV, and so we think that level of self-absorption that we see in such programs as the Jersey Shores somehow is the way things really ought to be, and that it's normative. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the causes are. But I do know, and my purpose this morning is that I want to ask your help, and help in doing just this, that when it says to living out this lack and decline of compassion, that we say at McPherson College, not in our house. Not in our house. And I'm asking you to be a part of a radical experiment in which we're going to call this year the year of living dangerously. A year in which we look for ways to demonstrate to one another radical acts of compassion, radical acts of moving out of self and moving into the world of the other so that we can see things through their eyes and doing acts of kindness. Demonstrate radical acts of compassion in the lives of others with whom you come into contact. So what does this look like? That's easy to say. That's speaking compassionate. But what is a radical act of compassion? Let me just give you a couple of examples that come to mind. It might mean that when you're on the field or when you're on the court, that after you deliver that perfect block, that perfect pick, that perfect spike, and the other person is stretched out on the floor, rather than beat your chest and gloat, you're the first one to reach a hand down and help the other person up. It might mean that when papers are passed out in classes and you have tests and you're looking there at that great grade and you notice somebody across the room isn't nearly as happy as you and perhaps are on the verge of tears, that real quickly you move past that thought that says, glad that's not me. And you go over and you engage the other person and you find out what's going on in their lives. And you understand that they had to stay up all night working at Walmart and you didn't. They had problems with their boyfriend, with their girlfriend. You listen, you share that burden, you walk with them for just a little bit and that burden starts to lift. That's a radical act of compassion. Or in the very least, radical acts of compassion mean that you notice those people in the class. Every class that you have has its outliers, doesn't it? Those people who don't really engage. And so you're aware of that dimension and you're working hard, just like a great sheepdog, to keep everybody moving in the same direction. And you're calling out that person to be a part of your group project and including them in the way things go in the class. Maybe it means that you're at a football game or a basketball game or a volleyball game, a soccer game, and someone falls and slips on the bleachers. And rather than standing there and laughing at the spectacle, you jump up to help out. Radical compassion is all this, and it's so much more. If you'll allow me just a minute to say that it's so much what is talked about in the New Testament book of Luke in the story of the Good Samaritan. That's a story that all of us know probably at some level. And the story goes, of course, that there's this person who's beaten up by a gang and left for dead. And all those that should have stopped to help the victim, they're the ones that pretended not even to see, aren't they? Yet the one less likely, the one with no good reason to be the compassionate responder is exactly the very person that stops in that story, isn't it? There were all kinds of good reasons why this person shouldn't have helped. There was a political impression involved. This person was oppressed. There was racism, and this person was the object of that racism, the one who helped. There was social inequality in the society. If the person who was the victim reached out beyond that state of being the victim in this story and helped the other person, and again, the most likely one who should not have engaged did. So let me put it into perspective. Let's say that I was beat up, left for dead, and there I was without hope. Those people who came by that should have stopped to help me, perhaps the pastor of the church that I attend, people in my church, they're too busy. They don't have time for me, so I'm left there. Second comes along people that I work with here at the school. And rather than extend a hand to me and help me out in my time of need, they likewise have more important things to do, like teach classes or to prepare food, whatever it might be. They should have stopped to help. They should have had a connection with me. Something wasn't held us together in the work that we did, but yet their concern for self was much more important than that. But yet there comes along a student or somebody who used to be a student at McPherson College that sees me there. And I say she used to be a student because maybe the spring before she got a letter from my office. It was that letter that says, I'm sorry, you can't come back to McPherson College because your grades are such. I think it's wise that you take a year off. And when she came to my office to try to tell me about the fact that her parents had split up, that she and her friend had called it quits, and that because of all of the crap going on in her life, her younger brother was in and out of jail and involved in drugs. There were so many things that were going on in her life. And you know, when she came to talk to me, I had more important things to do. You know, I had some academic affairs to attend to, and I wasn't sure she was going to make it at McPherson College. I wasn't sure that she had the right stuff anyway, and so I didn't pay any attention to what was going on. This was the lady then who came along and saw me and put all of that aside and reached out to me and really cared for me. All of the things that should have separated us, age, gender, maybe even ethnicity. I was in a position of power. She was powerless. All of those things that divide. She moved beyond those and reached out to me if I were the story, the person in the story, and she was the Good Samaritan. It didn't matter, all of these things that should have separated us. She looked beyond that, took me to the ER, stayed with me until the doctor said I was ready to go. She should have looked at me, in the case of most of our experience, and said, ha 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 ha, look at that guy. There is a God. There is a God, and divine justice has finally taken place. But no, she put that on the shelf and wasn't controlled by that rage to get even, but she wanted to move beyond that. So real quickly, I've just got two very short things to say. If you're tracking with me and you're thinking that, yeah, you want to be a part of this experiment of treating with others with radical compassion, please know that there is something in it for you. If we can establish this campus culture, you're going to benefit, because you'll find out that this is so true, what I'm about to say, that each time you're kind to someone else, each time you exercise empathy and compassion, it's almost like the movie Dragonheart, if you've seen that. You take out a piece of your heart when the other person needs it mostly, you put it into theirs. Yours mends just fine, and as a matter of fact, it enlarges and becomes even more compassionate, but that other person is going to carry around a piece of you for the rest of their lives. And that part that was a part of you is now a part of their lives. And when they tell their story, you're in it because you've made a difference in their lives by simple acts of noticing who has fallen and not shooting our wounded, but reaching out and bringing them back into the game. And then secondly, in addition to that Dragonheart metaphor, there is something cosmic that we call karma. To use the biblical metaphor of reaping what we sow, when we do acts of compassion and kindness to others, there will be a time when we enjoy the fruit of that seed that we have sown, and it will come back to benefit us multiple times over. So please think of this year as we move forward as the year that we want to see characterized by radical compassion. And I want to ask you simply this morning, will you please be a part of that transforming our culture so that this becomes our new reality? Blessings on you as we close here.